lalaking kasing bilis ng kidlat.
Applicants because there was no opposition. In the same letter, Yasmin signed it with the last paragraph. Yasmin signed it approved. And then he wrote a letter to former President Aquino. And he said that he approved and granted amnesty of applicants submitted to him. And then below that, it says, for your information. Of course, because he's the one who granted the amnesty, not the receiving and processing. That is their job, to receive it and to process and to determine whether or not they are. Subsequent thereto, they made a request to the Secretary of the National Defense, which he approved. And then he wrote the President saying that I approve and I granted the amnesty. So it was an power to grant amnesty is exclusive to the President. There is a ruling by the Supreme Court. Only the applicants. How should they appeal? They have been granted. The recommendation is to grant the amnesty. That's for them to evaluate whether. That's precisely why they wrote amending the grant of amnesty to Secretary Bull. And he responded by saying that approved and I have granted the amnesty. There, his letter to the President. Ay, hindi ko alam yan. I have no personal lang na pag-aralan na sila. But eventually, syempre, titingnan mo rin yung iba. I said, nobody was questioning the grant of amnesty to other soldiers. 2 years ago, that was the issue. That there was something wrong with the grant of amnesty to. That's why I said, yun ang reklamo yun ang mga nagsasabing may diferensya yung kanyang amnesty. Precisely why we filed. Otherwise, believe in the course. Yeah, because understanding was you referring to the same case. But there are two cases. So the motion in the other is different from the case that you were. Since we're discussing that particular case, then you must be referring, I understand. It's another case. You cannot be letting the court or the action on the other court in another case relative to that particular. Meron akong pinail doon sa kabila. Cases against Trillanes. Hindi ko na alam yun kung may papile panibagong kaso. But with respect to the present cases na pending, meron na sa Supreme Court. Marshal, hindi ba sinabi ng Presidente, prefer civilian court? Saka naman sa ibang court, porket wala kang tubo. Meron siya, legal yun. Against yun. Pending cases eh. Iba naman yung kaso doon. Mutiny, yung isa naman kudita. Ask them that. Kasi as far as we're concerned, there is already a pending case in the Supreme Court doing anything about that. Are they? President already said, I prefer civilian. I haven't seen the complaint. But what I know is that you grant an amnesty, you would expect that the man, after subsequent to the grant of amnesty, violated the rules. I do not admit to the crime. Is that the bona fide intention of applying? Believe. And in fact, subsequent acts show.
Ako si Sara Duterte. Iisa lang ang rodante Marcoleta sa Senado. Hindi natitinag, hindi natatakot, at laging nasa panig ng tama. Noong pinupuna at tinatakot ang tanggapan ng pangalawang Pangulo, siya ang tumindig at dumepensa, hindi alintana ang pambabatikos. Dahil para kay Marcoleta, ang tama ay pinaglalaban kahit mag-isa ka lamang. Marcoleta, may prinsipyo, may integridad, may paninindigan. Kaya ngayong darating na halalan, iboto natin ang number 38 sa balota. Rodante Marcoleta sa Senado. Kay Marcoleta, may pag-asa ka.
Para sa GMA Integrated News, Mariz Umali, nakatutok, 24 oras.